We begin with the breaking news in the case of that American girl whose trial made headlines around the world. Amanda Knox, the American college student, today once again found guilty by an Italian court of murdering her roommate. She is now living in Seattle, and this ruling sets the stage for a diplomatic duel. Will Italy try to get her back? Will the U.S. let her go? Tonight, Amanda Knox says she's going to put up a big fight, and ABC's Neil Karlinski is in Seattle with this bombshell day.
In a case with more twists than a Hollywood movie, an Italian court has once again found Amanda Knox guilty of the murder of her former roommate Meredith Kircher, guilty of a crime that has been at the center of an international media firestorm for more than 6 years. Her former boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, was also convicted after nearly 12 hours of deliberations by 2 judges and 6 jurors. Sources tell ABC News Knox felt sick as the verdict was read, saying in a statement, "I am frightened and saddened by this unjust verdict. Having been found innocent before, I expected better from the Italian justice system. This has gotten out of hand." Days before the verdict, Knox spoke to Guardian Films. It was aired by the BBC.
I'm definitely not going back willingly. They'll have to catch me and pull me back, kicking and screaming, into a prison that I don't deserve to be in.
Knox's parents told us late today they're stunned but defiant.
The emotion I pick up on is anger.
You're right.
Anger is what, moves us forward to, help us fuel the fight that we have now, probably years more of fighting for this.
But how could this happen? After being convicted of her roommate's murder in 2009 and serving 4 years in prison, she was cleared after a second trial found the original evidence unreliable. There was no evidence she was even at the murder scene. She then returned home to Seattle, writing a book, and then learning that Italy's highest court overturned the acquittal and ordered a new trial. She told Diane Sawyer the news was devastating.
I felt like after crawling through a field of barbed wire and finally reaching what I thought was the end, it just turned out that it was the horizon, and I had another field of barbed wire that I had ahead of me to crawl through.
But it won't end here. Knox can appeal yet again to Italy's Supreme Court, and if the guilty verdict is upheld, only then will the question of extradition be on the table. Knox's parents say the ordeal has cost them everything, devastating them financially. For now, Knox remains home in Seattle, free, but with the dark cloud of a 28-year, 6-month prison sentence hanging over her future. Neil Karlinski, ABC News, Seattle.
With thanks to Neil, I want to bring in ABC's Chief Legal Affairs anchor, Dan Abrams. If this is affirmed, Dan, is there any way the United States will let the Italians drag her back into prison in Italy?
Well, in most cases, the answer would be yes, because in Italy right now, she is a convicted murderer. In this case, I think it's unlikely. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's unlikely that the U.S. government will ultimately force her to go back to Italy.
Well, again, when I talked to her, she talked about U.S. government officials backing her, and she had gotten some state officials particularly standing by her. So is this a political decision and the consequences of that?
It helps her. This is a political decision and not a legal one, because if you viewed it strictly through the legal prism, you have someone who's been convicted, had due process in an Italian court, as long as it's affirmed. But since it's a political decision and ultimately going to go through the State Department, I think she's going to have a lot of support in this country, which is going to make it very difficult. And I think that they are going to frame legal arguments to say this is the reason we are not going to send her back.
Okay, they can ask. Whether we send her is another issue.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, Dan.